Welcome to Incessantly Seeking, where we discuss the pursuits that drive our lives with a new guest every Friday. I'm your host, Luciana Fauhaber, and today we're discussing the pursuit of disruption. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us again today. We're here with Julio Ricardo Varela, who is one of the creators of Latino Rebels and now is with Futuro Media. And his life pursuit has been of disruption, on raising a community, of having a voice, of being heard. So, Julio, welcome. I would love to hear, how did you end up in this life path?
Hey, well, thanks for the invite.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you think about how you get here, and I've explained this a couple of times, you just you have a plan, and then that plan for some reason disintegrates in front of you, and I think during the recession where I was on this like different track in my career in publishing, and the industry went through a lot of contraction, and people stopped buying books, school books, and it was kind of this like 4 to 5 year like time for me where you just don't know what your next career move is. So you kind of like you figure it out. One of the things that I was also doing back at the time was, because I had gone undergraduate to Harvard, I was given an early Facebook invite in 2004 because I had a Harvard EDU email. So like Facebook at the time was like they were just giving out invitations. And so I joined, so I started really seeing the potential of social and digital media sort of as a hobby. And then I joined Twitter and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I had started as a journalist way back, and I was kind of getting back to writing, trying to figure out like what I'm going to do with my career. And so I saw this need for information sharing, like how social media was going to be the place where you're going to get your news. So I started playing with that a lot during those times. And then I started blogging. Like I had my own, there's still a JulioRvarela.com URL that I just started writing, I think like 2009, 2010, and seeing that there was a lot of things that interest me. There was like a lot of good community out there in terms of shared interests, and it was just a really exciting time. And then fast forward to 2011, I was in between jobs trying to figure out, all right, I mean, I was really enjoying writing online, but I didn't want it to just be about me. And so I was watching like The Daily Show and really like Jon Stewart, and was like, oh, we should do a satire. I should do a satire type site, whatever, parody, whatever they call it. Because Jon Stewart's such a rebel, and I'm Latino, and so I wrote Latino Rebels on a piece of paper. And I woke up the next morning, I was like, oh, this ain't a bad idea. So then I just kind of registered the site, formed an LLC, started doing things, not really knowing what to do, but it was a time to like educate and like kind of bring the community that you're from, because I wasn't seeing myself in like what everyone says, I wasn't seeing myself in the mainstream as like this bilingual, bicultural person who grew up in Puerto Rico and then lived in the United States, and was kind of done watching like Univision and Telemundo. Like wasn't like what I grew up like. I knew it was in my space. I'm a Spanish speaker, but it wasn't my world. It wasn't my world, and I think I kind of banked on this feeling that there was a lot of more people like me who kind of were living this bilingual, bicultural life that weren't really talked to about, and yeah, and then we started as like a comedy site, which is, I don't think a lot of people realize that it was kind of, we were just kind of exposing like anti-immigrant rhetoric and things like this happen, and then we just happened to walk into this story about a month into the site that there was a big controversy of the Puerto Rican Day Parade, that Coors beer was like sponsoring the Puerto Rican Day Parade, and they were using a term called emboricuate, which is like when in Spanish, to be boricua, but it was like it sounded like emborrachate, get drunk. And there was a lot of people in New York, or a lot of Puerto Ricans who were like, here we go, stereotypical drunk Puerto Ricans at the New York, at the Puerto Rican Day Parade, blah blah blah. And it's one of the first stories we wrote, like really started following, and we got some attention. We got some more in the summer. Fast forward, like in a year, I was like on Face the Nation talking about Latino voters. It just was like this, like, what's going on? And you don't realize you're doing it until you do it, right? And we were kind of then following early immigrant rights activists movements in Arizona. We actually were the first Latino news outlet to cover like Occupy Wall Street, like really back in the day. Like it was just like, all right, let's cover Occupy Wall Street. And we were just kind of like doing what we wanted to do. And as the founder, I had a really good group of friends who were just like, oh, I believe in this. We created like this private Facebook group, and we would just share stories with everyone, and then like we'd write them up under Latino Rebels, and it was a lot of fun. And there was a lot of people who really believed that this was like important, and we were kind of a little bit ahead of the wave, right? And it's interesting because as it evolved, the site was very loved by a lot of people, but it was also very hated because we were challenging conventions, and we weren't asking for permission, and we were just kind of being ourselves. And yeah, it was. It's hard to think about those times. I just remember it was a lot of hours spent, and any money I had, it would just go into that. So it was just really, I look back at that now, and I'm like, it was a good. It was like going to school. It was like going to like journalism school, and I just happened to just do it on the ground training. So in the end, yeah, like there wasn't a plan. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like I was like, oh, I gotta have a plan. Like this is my 5 year plan. It was like, wow, this is cool. Like I'm looking for a job, but I can do this. Yeah, this is great. So that's kind of what I really like. It became like a place for me to like grow creatively without asking for permission. Right. That was my place. And like I said, we were a little bit snarkier. We were a little bit like people thought we were probably like mean, and there's a lot of people that just couldn't believe, like everyone thought there was like tons of millions of dollars. I was like, there's no money here. It just hit the community. I don't know what to say. And it was timing, a little luck. The name helped. People, the writing's good. That's the one thing I emphasize. It's as a journalist, I wasn't gonna publish bad writing, and I think people really liked it. So yeah, what else can I say?
I think that you found a niche, you found a need. People wanted to be heard. There's this need for
Yeah,
overcoming and becoming part of the mainstream, quote unquote, which we're still
yeah,
seeing both in politics and entertainment and, any business really, not just on the Latino diverse side, but also on the female versus male
yeah,
dichotomy of what we're living today. So, I find that really insightful and inspiring because as someone who is also creating with whatever we have, resource wise, be it time, be it, equipment or whatnot. I think these are stories that need to be heard, that you
yeah,
can build something from the ground up and end up really impacting a lot of people. But I do remember that Coors Light incident in New York City with the
yeah,
parade because I was a teacher at the time, and I remember that the day parade is actually somewhat of a educational institution too. So there
yeah,
was some kind of like controversy of like, wait a minute, beer shouldn't be supporting this. It's supposed to be educational for kids. Oh my
yeah, yeah,
God.
yeah, yeah,
So I really vividly remember that. But, what I love about what you said too about Facebook is that when I finally got the invite, I was going to Fordham in New York. And it became later on, as anybody could join, a way to really stay in touch with my family. But I remember the first time that I ever chatted with anybody online, I lived in Brazil still, and it
yeah.
was ICQ or the AOL chat rooms. And I remember it was just like a name, and you had no idea who you were talking to. It could be
Right.
could be like nowadays thinking about the dangers of
Yeah.
I'm like, it could have been literally anybody, but he had that sense of connection of like, finally, the world feels smaller and that we're finding people all
Yeah,
over the world.
yeah. I think that's the one thing. It's like the one thing I tell everyone is, you know, you don't have to have the plan. Just do it, right? I know that sounds like really like, oh, that's yeah, it's easy for you to say that. I'm like, I mean, we that's all it was. It was like, who do we like? Like-minded individuals. Who am I hanging with? Oh, I like these people. They shared my writing and blah blah blah. And then next thing you know, oh, you know this person? And then we used to hang out. I mean, I remember in the early days we try to get together in New York, just talk a little bit about what this is. Like, who the hell knew, right? Like, who the hell knew? Like, I was just kind of like, and it evolved, right? I think one of the things that, with the 10 years of Rebels now, it has evolved dramatically in a lot of ways that now I'm kind of like, oh, okay, now we're definitely more of a journalism type site, a news site with commentary and informing the community. There's a lot of similar players, and I don't really worry about what other people are doing, to be honest with you. I just kind of make sure that I whatever we can do each day to give to the community, then we're doing okay, right? And like I said, it's like there's like people that like absolutely hate us, like could not even begin to like fathom, whatever. I've been called every name in the book or whatever,
Are you getting
and
hate mail?
yes, I get hate mail. That's happened all the time. But I always quote one of your fellow country people from Brazil, Coelho, who always talked about mediocrity. You're don't being mediocre is people that listen to criticism or get lose focus. It's like you're not here to be mediocre in life. You're here to be great. And I have the quote somewhere written in one of my journals, and that kind of helped me through sort of this growth because I do think part of when you create something from your own lane, there's this an inherent skepticism that it wasn't blood, sweat, and tears, right? That I was given this,
Hmm.
that I went to like a privileged institution and I actually had a career. And when in fact, in the end, I've been through like several career transitions. I I kind of reinvented my career in my 40s, and you just question it, right? You just wonder like, oh, and then you find your path. And it's kind of a little bit insulting to the point. It's like you don't know my story. You don't know how I did it. Like I'm the only one that knows the truth, right? And so, but if you want to obsess, if you want to take that energy and to talk about what we do, great, awesome. Like then that was the thing that I had to learn through that because it was a little bit rough and tumble. Now I'm like it's bigger, right? It's bigger. There's a mission. I'm at Futuro Media. It's a bigger thing, and and that's where I feel like not settling is the journey for me right now, right? I'm constantly thinking to myself, oh, where are we publishing next? What are we doing now? Like it's exciting, it's fun, now I get to make a living out of it, right? I didn't make a living out of it for several years, and yeah, I lost money, yeah, but you know I'm still here. So you know what I mean? So it's like that's what I say. It's like I'm still here,
And that's what
and
matters. At the end of the day, that's really
yeah,
what matters. If we look historically of who has come and gone or quit or gave up, like the fact that you're still standing and you're still doing what you believe in and you're fighting for that every day, I think that's the win. I mean, obviously we need to live and we need to support ourselves, and
yeah,
hopefully we can do that and be passionate about what you do, in the same time. But I think that's the win.
yeah, it is, and I think that's where I don't know if it's wisdom as you get older in life, or you maybe. spend, you have more experiences, whether it's with, friendships breaking or things and whatever, right? Or this, one relationship ends, another one starts. Like there is an infinite curiosity now that I have about life, that I wake up every morning, thankful, and I enjoy what I do. Like I get excited about what I do, and I'm happy about it. And I wouldn't say that my entire life was like that. You kind of had to figure that out, right? You figure it out on your own. Some people might tend to figure it out quicker than others. It took me a while. It took me like several years of really massively clinical depression that I don't talk much about it, um, but I do know that that helped me in a lot of ways. I look back at where I was maybe even like 12, 13 years ago, with two kids, married, like, and being the provider, and like being like infinitely clinically depressed. And you don't hear about stuff like, he's like, well, why would you get like that? It's like, well, I don't know. I mean, it's a sickness, so I can't tell you, like, it's a disease, so it's an illness. But there was an inherent like feeling of pushing through that I didn't see at the time. And I just kind of, you feel like you go through the motions of, all right, I'll go to therapy. All right, I'll go on meds. Yeah, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'll work out, whatever. But you're constantly doing it. And then eventually, whatever treatment you have, at least you start getting a clear head about it, to be like, oh, you know what? Yeah, like this ain't so bad. Right. And then each day gets more manageable. And I think about that a lot now, because I think about the fact that I've been able to use what I learned through my therapy and coping strategies to even get through days when it gets really complex, right? That I don't feel the burden of like I feel like I've killed it. It's still in me. It's like very tiny. And there's moments where I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Especially during the pandemic, where you're like, oh, wait a minute, this feels okay. This doesn't feel good. But I go play soccer. I go box in my garage. I have a punching bag. Music, 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 music. I mean, I didn't realize how much music has really got me going. So I'll listen to a lot of music while I work, right? And I just, it's what it is, right? And what's interesting now, when you have all these streaming services, you can literally relive like your childhood, like
Yeah.
within 5 minutes. Like I just was like, you know, not to sound like I'm this like prog rock like nerd, but I am. But I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm listening to early Genesis again with Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins. But I'm talking like 70s, when they were like weird. And I started listening to that when I was like 11, 12 years old, and I was told I was weird in Puerto Rico. And then I'm listening to it now at like 52, after like 40 years, and I'm like, oh my god, I remember this album. I remember where I was as a kid. I remember like this moment. I remember this feeling, and I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. Like, so there's things, it shouldn't dictate your entire life, the online world. And I don't share everything about my life on the online world. I just don't. That's not how I roll. But for to be a journalist, to be someone like a voice and like share a little bit of my life, like I'm okay with that, and it's helped me. So
And I'm so glad you brought it up, because discussing this pursuit of disruption, I think being a male and being a Latino male, there's so many stereotypical things that come with admitting that at some point you had to deal with your emotions. I think
yeah,
we expect as a culture that men have to be this strong, unemotional, unhuman creature, that shows up every day, provides, and is the husband and the father and
yeah,
whatnot. And I think, yes, it's true for men in general, but I think for Latino men, it's even stronger, the sense of the machismo, and
yeah,
it's important to bring these things up and to talk about it, and it's to disrupt this perception of what is this male figure that has
right.
been built, for our upbringing. So I'm so glad you brought that up. And last night I was actually listening to Backstreet Boys. So I
Oh,
know
there you go.
exactly what you were talking about. I was like, oh my God.
Hey, you roll back, like, like I'm back in high school. I'm back, like, I'm 14 again or whatever. But I think that's the perfect. I mean, part of this actually does have to do with your family and your parents. I mean, my parents got divorced when I was young. Um, I was raised by my mom mostly in the Bronx, and my dad was from Puerto Rico, and I would go down there. But I've always been surrounded by strong women, right? So for me, I've never even my dad, like, and my abuelo, like from my dad's side, like there was always love, right? There was always like something that you could express. It was okay to cry. It was okay to like express affection as a man, whether it's a dad to his kid or whatever, or your cousin. So I've never felt like hiding my emotions. You know what I mean? Like I never felt like that was something that I was going to struggle with. But I do think it does get imposed on you, right? When you're supposed to like get married, you have a kid, you're supposed to have, you're supposed to support people. And then there's a pressure where it's especially when you go to like an elite institution, like, people are like, well, you went there, like you should be like crushing it. And I'm like, how many people at Harvard like have problems?
Oh my
Like
God, yes.
it's like, it's just this, like, it's an eye opener. Once you get into these elite spaces, it's really messed up. And you kind of go, wait a minute, what's going on? And I've had these conversations with classmates. Like I've had classmates who've struggled, and it's not guaranteed. That's the thing. I think we believe like a certain thing is guaranteed, and it's not. And the only thing you can do is like be available, wake up. You have your health. Like that's and like, don't be a jerk. Like us, I tell this to my teenage kids and his friends. They were asking me, like, he just graduated from high school, and it was like, Mr. Varela, what advice would you give? I was like, don't be a jerk to people. Like, just don't be a jerk. Like, start there, right? And see that there's people out there who um can, you can see the value. Human beings. There's a connection, right? Like, just do it, right? And that's the part where I'm like. But it was hard. Everyone goes through it. I was skeptical. I was like a 20-year-old, like the stupid, like my feelings, blah blah blah. Like everyone goes through it. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I think also the idea of just do just try it. You might like I love it you said that. You might not
Yeah.
know, you might not see the immediate results of anything, be it work, be it career, be it life, be romantic, be whatever. But this idea that just stick with it and then you'll see the results eventually. Like I love
Yeah,
that.
and it's not instant. And the problem is, it's like in this day and age, we're all instantly gratified, right? So I think that's another problem. Is that you expect? Well, I've done everything. Like I have taken the plunge, and guess what? I'm still not where I'm at. And I'm like, but do you find those moments? Are you getting little victories? You're seeing something that are you? What is it that you love? You can't go a day without not loving something. You know what I
Hopefully.
mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
like if you're not one thing, like it's just one thing, and it doesn't have to be like a person. It doesn't could be like you know like a song. It could be a tweet. It could be anything. And you're like, oh my god, that's a funny meme. I love it. Like you got to have some feeling. I mean, that's where I think we we also put too much pressure on ourselves to try to create this public persona, especially in the social media space where everything's okay, right? And so people hide behind their everything is okayness by being like, here's my big Instagram, and you're like, there's a lot, and that's the part where I think it's important as as you handle or whatever, as you grow in your career or whatever, or you're able to achieve certain things, you got to remember where you came from, right? And there were very dark moments. Like I mean, and the more and more I talk to people, like it's very. I don't think a lot of people have like said like, "Oh, life has been easy." And it's like, and so I feel like just embrace it, right? Embrace the moment, embrace it in a lot of ways. Don't get caught up into it. Don't overthink it. And the other thing is like you can't really control anyone but yourself. You know what I mean? It's like in the end, life is a series of like and this is where I get like really like, but it's like you will express rejection and disappointment all your life. Like that is just a reality, right? That disappointments, like whether it's that friend or whether it's who you were going out with or whatever, or but you have to find a peace within you to say, I'm okay being here by myself on my porch right now, where like I don't have to be with people, and I'm totally happy and content. Right? It doesn't mean I'm not being social. It doesn't mean I don't want to go hang out with friends or hang out with my family or anything, and that's going to happen, right? But you have to find a way to be at peace with yourself to not beat yourself up, and that's the part where it's like when the plan gets changed, where you think like, oh, I was going down this road and it didn't, you get angry. There's so many feelings, and you realize, wait a minute, this is a process, this is a journey. I get it now, and then I go, wow, like that was, yeah. What if I decided not to stay in this world 12 years ago? That's the part where I'm like even in the middle of a freaking pandemic, I'd be like, I mean, I'm talking to you from a porch somewhere here in Massachusetts. Like the sun's coming. Like, I have windows everywhere, and I got sun coming in. I'm like, what am I? So I miss this, right? I miss this if I decide, and I think we put too much pressure on ourselves to kind of get it all solved immediately, when in fact the real growth happens when you take that journey and you make that choice, and it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, but it might lead you somewhere else too, you know what I mean? So that's where I'm kind of like, it's just this infinite curiosity that I'm starting to really like be more into, which I maybe wasn't like in my 20s or my 30s. I was kind of much more cynical, but anyway.
Well, curiosity, I agree. I think it's key. And whenever you're trying to do something new, it has to be more than just, social media or whatever it is that you're trying to like accomplish.
Right.
So I think that's a great point and a great note. And now that we're here in this space, right, you're moving forward with what you're tackling next, and you're
Yeah.
joining Futuro Media. What are the plans there? How do you see this going
Yeah,
forward?
so I've been with Futuro Media, with Maria and Hostess Company, since 2014. And because I was unemployed and I needed a job. And she told me, it's like, don't ever get rid of Latino Rebels. I'm like, okay, but I'm not getting paid for that. I'm doing my job. Luckily, I had some really good friends who were like, you know what, I want to play around with it. So like people like Hector Luis Alamo, Marlena Fitzpatrick, Shari Delgadillo, Christian Vasquez, like they were just people have come in and out of Latino Rebels just because they just like, this is what it is. And then we have 600 plus contributors. You know, I'm getting new contributors every day, and so like that's why I mean it's like bigger. So one of the things is when Rebels officially became part of Futuro Media in 2018, it is this notion of trying to create a place. How do I say it? It's like I love things like the Atlantic, right? The Atlantic. I love reading that. I want to create like that type of idea for the Latino community, with that smart like writing with voices, and it takes a little time, but it's fun, right? It's fun. And not only that, it's like, when I'm, now at Futuro Media, where I'm in a senior leadership position, it's like we got Latino USA, which is great, in the thick, which I co-host with Maria. We have, Futuro Studios coming out with, the history of reggaeton with Spotify, which is going to be awesome. Um, all my colleagues at Futuro Studios, particularly Marlon Bishop, they just crushed it. And, Maria has a new unit, and I'm one of the people that gets to celebrate all this, that gets to talk to people about it. That, you know, that's the part where I'm like so enjoyed, and like I enjoy it so much because the work that's being done out of Futuro Media is just spectacular right now. And someone like Maria who had that vision, and to be like, all right, we're gonna just have a good team. Like it's really like we don't get caught up in it, right? And so I'm like living proof of someone who's like found something that they truly really love, and I'm like, what am I? What's the problem here? And I get to so that to me is like what makes Futuro so great. It's like we're doing as much as we can every day, representing a community, rinse and repeat, do it again, don't overthink it, do it again, don't overthink it, like just do it again, and let's go. And you just keep doing it, and you build the muscle memory, and you don't have any expectations. and you're doing it right, and people start going, wait a minute, whoa, these people, like, they're speaking to me. Oh, okay, then this comes in, and then all of a sudden you have a bigger place, and then all of a sudden you get the interest of like bigger companies, and then it changes, right? And then you're trying to, like, this dynamic of changing media to reflect underserved communities. You're helping to lead that dynamic. So now you're in a place of like, this is awesome, right? Like, this is awesome. And so that's what I'm excited about. I'm also super excited about the fact that I got to do a project with Wajahar Ali, one of my dear friends from Al Jazeera America, and we decided to, you know, we I came up with the name, called it This Week in White Journalism, and he loved the idea of like, how do you look at, how do you begin to critique media through white supremacy, because that's basically what's out there now. And I got him to write a script, and we performed it. We shot it in DC in early July. It's in post production now. We did it with 150, which is part of it's the incubator arm of Warner Media, and we're gonna take this concept. We're gonna pitch it. We want to do a Latino Rebels late night show, and we're gonna get meetings. And I'm like, what else do you want? You know what I mean? So that's exciting. So I think, yeah, it's not going to come overnight. It's incredible hard work and dedication. There's days where I was like, oh, I don't need to do this, but I'm also finding like I don't have to do it anymore on weekends, right?
Right.
Like I got to see the beach this past weekend, and I did not have to. I turned work off, and I think that's also helping me realize that also taking care of yourself is so important, and you got to figure it out. And it was good to see like really good friends. It was good to like see people that I haven't seen in 10 years, in a post-pandemic place, and just kind of catching up and just seeing like, oh wait, your kid's going to college soon? Yeah, mine too. That's crazy. Like, wow, we were coaching baseball together and all that. So that's where, you know I don't. But the one thing I've learned is like I don't know what life's going to bring me anymore. You know what I
But that's
mean?
part of the fun, right?
I, if you realize it's part of the fun, because I think a lot of people see that and they get insecure and they get scared and they get anxious. And I try to tell people, it's like, you know what? You can't worry about things that haven't happened.
Right.
It's like
I mean, you can, but that's not a great life.
it's not a great. It's like you're gonna worry about things. This hasn't happened. So like a worry is like it hasn't happened. Now, if I'm not saying you have to have a like empty mind here, but at the same time, it's like you have to find ways to think about how best you can handle what's being given to you. And if you're adding things that don't exist into your brain and they're not real, then you're just clouding your brain. Whereas if you just focus on the things that you have to do each day, and it's tough. I mean, like I could see why being in quarantine and being like isolated from the world the last year and a half is big for people. Like for a lot of people, that's just not good. I mean, like I said, it's like you recognize those dark spots. Um, the only thing I can do is say like, hey, you know what? I've been there, and I know, but your truth is your truth. But I've been there. I mean, I can be sympathetic, and if you have compassion, those are the things that we should be celebrating and elevating the sort of qualities to make us better human beings. Um, but yeah, it's I'm not, he's like, I'm not bored, right?
And I
That's
think
the
that
thing.
says a lot. And the reason why I really wanted to talk to you is because I think in a lot of the diverse communities, there is this covert self promotion that happens in the name of the raising the community. And with you, I find that you do what you say you do and you stand for that. So now in your new role in Futuro, not only you get to celebrate and witness this great tide that is rising, but I've seen it. I've been part of it, and I've seen you help raise this tide, and champion new voices, and try to help more Latinos being seen, more voices being heard. So I love that. And I think we need more of that. And I'm glad that you're getting to do that now, not only with Latino Rebels, but also with Futuro Media.
Right, but I think you have to also think like I think you're absolutely right about how you position this, right? Because I think it's important, and I'm really glad that you saw that distinction because I do think there's a difference between what's in it for me, which is what a lot of people ask that, and then as opposed to how do I help my community every day, right? And that just switching that question, right? Just switching that question completely changes the entire conversation. And I think that the issues of authenticity, real voices, of speaking truth, and giving people like not forgetting where you come from, understanding that there are always going to be new voices out there, and you're not tied to having the most views or the most clicks or I don't it's like I don't pay attention to that. And I know people are like, well, how do you not? It's like, what do you? I mean, did you like the piece? Did you learn something today? If I get one person a day, I'm fine. Fine. You know what I mean? It's like if one person can learn a little bit from what the work that we do a day, then we're fine. Like we're ahead. And that's where I think I just wish more and more people in our community could see that as opposed to asking them like what's in it for me, which I think in the end is like super selfish, and I think it adds a lot of like fear in people. And whereas yeah, and it's different. Yeah, would I be saying like this at 23 when I'm trying to figure it out? No, but I wish I could like the only thing I do is like tell my kids like maybe you don't have to do this at 23. Like I learned from this, and like maybe it hits them, maybe it's not, but I do think like we shouldn't put so much pressure on ourselves. We should like be in the moment, try to understand like what's in front of us, like understand that this is a gift, and and then celebrate it, and then do it again the next day, and find purpose, right? Find purpose. And sometimes you might not find the purpose yourself. It might just hit you, right? It might come from other places, and that's what I think. That's why I say it's like being infinitely curious is very important.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This was great. I think, again, that this is going to be another piece that's going to help people realize that when the communities succeed, we all individually succeed. And, the more that we can do for each other in disrupting this white media of supremacy that, like you said, is just what we call the mainstream, it's better for all of us.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank
Oh,
you for
thank
your
you. I
time.
really, yeah, thank you very much.
Tell us how to find you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. At Julito77, Julito, seven, the number 77, or also at Latino Rebels. You can find me, search that. We're in all, major social media platforms. Although we're not on TikTok because I just can't
So
with
no dancing
TikToks.
videos from you.
No, no, this is where I'm old. Like, I'm just not there. I'm just not there.
I love it. Although now that you have back like your collection of music from the 70s, I don't know. I'll keep an eye out.
I know, 70s prog rock. I don't know if there are any good dances with that, but maybe I'll think about it.
Thanks, Julio. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks again.
So on the cusp sometimes, because I think for all filmmakers of color or stories that revolve around marginalized communities, we unfortunately have yet to be given the luxury to fail. Like when there is a film about a minority group, it better succeed, because if it doesn't, it's held against us.